Special report.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. We're listening from the president now on an update of what happened at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Let's listen.
That was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press, and in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way very beautiful, a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, and he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released, for purposes of transparency, clarity, I've ordered it to be put out. You probably have it by now, put out on Truth and put out on many other platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him, and he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, you know, it's not a particularly secure building, and I want to say this. Attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different, because today we need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the D.C. police. And we just spoke with the mayor. And when we're finished, the police chief is going to take over and discuss it also from their viewpoint. But they also performed exactly as they were supposed to. And you see the attacker in different positions, but you also see the attacker totally subdued and under control. So as you know, this is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. In Butler, Pennsylvania, less than 2 years ago, you all know that story. And in Palm Beach, Florida, a few months after that, we came close. We really had, again, we had some great work done by law enforcement. But in light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people, and there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched, and I was very, very impressed by that. But First Lady and I were taken very well care of, very quickly rushed off the stage. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's here, was likewise beautifully done. He was just saying how quickly everybody acted, law enforcement, Secret Service in particular in this case, but law enforcement. Marco had the same thing. Pete was there. Pete didn't want any help. He didn't want anybody to help him. He doesn't want anybody to help him, but he did get some, didn't you? And I think you also said that it was very impressive. So with that, I'd like to ask Todd Blanche to come up, say a few words, and tell you it's already underway. The man has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California, and he's a sick person, a very sick person. And we don't want things like this to happen. I think it's very important that I say, though, and I told the representatives of the evening, they did such a beautiful job. It was such a beautiful evening. And again, they're talking about free speech in our Constitution. That's what it's all about, not just White House Correspondents. It was really based on free speech in our Constitution. But I said very importantly that we'll do it again within the next 30 days, and we'll make it bigger and better and even nicer. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved. I also want to thank the press, the media. You've been very responsible in your coverage. I will say I've been seeing what's been out. You've been very responsible. So Todd Blanche, I'd like to say a few words. I know we're going to have cash, and then you're going to go on. We can ask. I guess we can take a couple of questions. I want to thank the First Lady that was a rather traumatic experience for her. There was a lot of action taking place up there very quickly. But again, the response time was really incredible. And we're going to reschedule. We're going to do it again. We're not going to let anybody take over our society. We're not going to cancel things out because we can't do that. We wanted to stay tonight. I will tell you, I fought like hell to stay. But it was protocol. They said, please, sir. Because they didn't know there was a lot of action going on, and they didn't know could there be probably a lone shooter, but we'll find out. We'll find out very quickly. They have it very well under control. So I want to thank everybody very much. And Todd Blanche, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Tonight you saw the very worst and the very best of this country. You saw the very worst by the actions of that coward that the President just talked about. But you also saw the very best because you saw law enforcement do exactly what they're supposed to do. And you'll see the videos come out, I expect, very shortly, and you'll see law enforcement do exactly what we want them to do. And so I echo what what President Trump just said, that we are extraordinarily grateful and appreciative of the men and women of law enforcement that did their jobs tonight, including one who was injured. This investigation is ongoing. I expect you will see charges filed shortly. The charges should be self-evident given the conduct, but as you'll hear, there will be multiple charges surrounding the shooting, around the possession of firearms, and anything else that we can get on this guy. The investigation is obviously ongoing and just started. There is federal law enforcement already working on search warrants and doing their job, and I don't want to get ahead of them and don't want to get ahead of the work that they're doing even as we speak. Director Patel and I were just on the crime scene a short while ago, and everybody in this room should rest assured that the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI, Secret Service, everybody's on the scene doing their job. I know that the police chief is going to give an update from the scene as soon as we're finished here, and I obviously will lead the details of what they have learned to him. But in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody in this room for the courage. And I want to thank President Trump for his words, and I promise you, justice will be served. Thank you. Director Patel.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. President. The President's absolutely right. You saw the best resolve of American law enforcement because you, Mr. President, inspire them 24/7, 365. You give them the resources that they need, and they know that you have their back. And that is a changing dynamic in this country, and that's why you saw brave Secret Service agents respond immediately, swiftly, subdue and take down the suspect, and safeguard the lives of thousands of individuals at that hotel. Thanks to our interagency partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI was rapidly deployed onto the scene, took over the evidence response unit, is examining all the ballistics that were found on scene, to include the long gun and the shell casings. We are conducting witness interviews as we speak. You will hear from our team on the scene there with the mayor and the head of the FBI field division there. But please know what the Attorney General has just said reigns no truer. You saw the very best of America tonight. The very best unite us at a time of uncertainty, because we have leadership here with the President and the Vice President that backs law enforcement, and the men and women that I shook their hands on the scene today could not have been prouder to show up on scene. And as the Attorney General said, make no mistake, we are conducting witness interviews. If you have any information whatsoever related to this event, 1-800-CALL-FBI. 1-800-CALL-FBI. No piece of information is too small. No piece of information is inadequate. We will evaluate it all. We will also be conducting interviews of those that were there. And if any of those individuals have information, please come forward to law enforcement or the FBI or the Metropolitan Police Department. We will be examining this individual's background thoroughly. That process has already started. And we are going to ensure that he was either a lone wolf actor or anyone else that was responsible. We will analyze all evidence immediately to make sure that we safeguard this country. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, thank you for your leadership. Attorney General and Homeland Secretary Marlin, thank you for your partnership in law enforcement.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, we'll do a couple and then we go to the chief. Madam Chairman, I just want to say you did a fantastic job. What a beautiful evening, and we're going to reschedule. Okay. And after that, it's very tough for her to ask a killer question, right? But you have done a fantastic job. Please.
Mr. President, I appreciate it. As you mentioned, it all happened so quickly, and I wonder, especially because unfortunately you have experience with these sorts of threats, in that moment when you realized there was a threat and service agents were telling us to get down, can you describe what was going through your mind, how you were feeling in that moment?
That's a very good question, actually. It's always shocking when something like this happens. It's happened to me a little bit, and that never changes. The fact we were sitting right next to each other, First Lady on my right, and I heard a noise and sort of thought it was a tray. I thought it was a tray going down. You know, I've heard that many times, and it was a pretty loud noise. And it was from quite far away. He hadn't breached the area at all. They really got him. But so it was quite far away, but it was a gun. And some people really understood that pretty quickly. Other people didn't. I was watching to see what was happening. Probably should have gone down even faster. Melania was very cognizant, I think, of what happened. I think she knew immediately what happened. She was saying, that's a bad noise. And we were whisked away along with other people, but we were really whisked away. And again, the performance of the Secret Service and the police, all of the law enforcement, I thought was really good. So it was very quick. There wasn't a lot of time to be thinking because it was a matter of seconds before we were out the door and gone into an area. We very much, and you wanted to too, we very much wanted to continue it because I don't like to let these sick people, these thugs, these horrible, horrible people change the fabric of our life, change the course of what we do. So we held out. You were there. We held out right till the end, but they didn't want to take a chance, and I understand there was protocol. But we're going to be doing one hopefully within the next 30 days or sooner, and I am ready, willing, and able. And I was all set to really rip it. And I said to my people, this would be the most inappropriate speech ever made if I said one. So I'll have to save it. I don't know if I could ever be as rough as I was going to be tonight. I think I'm going to be probably very nice. I'll be very boring the next time, but we're going to have a great event. And you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. There's a report in the New York Post that this assailant assembled his weapon somewhere on site at the hotel. What do you think about that? And I ask respectfully, why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this, where they got them, but the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names there, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We've taken this country, and we were a laughing stock for years, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've changed this country. And there are a lot of people that are not happy about that. So I think that's the answer, Peter.
And after Butler, your team for a while rethought outdoor events.
Yeah.
Do you think that you now need to rethink
No.
indoor
Well,
events?
but then you just don't do events. No, I can't do that. I have to. It is what it is. We have to do it. The room was very, very secure. He charged from 50 yards away, so he was very far away from the room.
And what did you think when you saw the video of how fast he was running?
He was moving. He was really moving. And the reaction time was great. Boy, those guys, they had their guns drawn literally by the time he was there. They were shooting.
That's right.
I thought they were very impressive. And if I didn't, I'd let you know. I'm not going to be, I would not stand for that. No, I thought they were very impressive.
Thank you, President Trump, and thank you for updating us on the suspect earlier. Were you aware of any threats? Was your team aware of any threats beforehand? And do you believe you were the target of this tonight?
I guess. I mean, these people they're crazy. They're crazy, and you never know. He was very far away from me. He had to go through a lot. We had resources all over. We had resources sitting at tables, literally in disguise, sitting maybe at your table, who knows? But we had people all over the room, so he had a long way to go. That was really a first line of defense, and they got him. And they really, they acted incredibly. No, there was no notification. We had no idea. Go ahead,
Do you know
Kevin.
any political motivations from this?
Well, you never
suspect?
know. Now, we'll be able to tell you that maybe by tomorrow or the next day. He's in custody, and they're asking him a lot of questions. I guess they're going over Todd, and they're already at his apartment. He lives in California.
Yes, sir.
And they're over there, so they'll be able to tell you. Thank you, Caitlin.
President Trump, did the suspect say anything, or was he wearing anything that would allege some type of motive here?
No, I mean, he was a guy who looked pretty evil when he was down. They had him down. He was fighting hard. He was in my opinion, a sick person. Who would do that but a sick person? But I think you're going to find everything about him. No reason to talk about it now. But tomorrow at this time, long before this time, you're going to know a lot of things about him. They seem to think he was a lone wolf, and I feel that too.
Are you concerned about U.S. Secret Service protection ability? We saw several of the detailees take minutes to be escorted out the room.
No, they acted very quickly. No, I was very impressed by Secret Service. I'm the one, and Mark Wayne, you would agree with that, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm the one that would complain. You don't have to complain for me. I would be complaining. I'd be up here right now saying they didn't do their job. Oh, believe me, because, it's my life. And I want to live because I want to make this country great. That's why I want to live. But when you're impactful, they go after you. When you're not impactful, they leave you alone. Okay, a couple of more. Go ahead, please.
Is there any indication that this shooting could have been linked to the war in Iran?
I don't think so, but you never know. We're going to know a lot. We have the best people in the world working on it, and we're going to know a lot. Please.
Mr. President, there's a lot. You, as well as some of us who have covered Butler, experienced another horrific day 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What felt similar? You had the First Lady with you today. What felt different? And you have another 2+ years in office. Are you concerned about something like this happening
Well, I
again?
can't be concerned. I can only get great people. They did the job, in my opinion, a much better job than Butler. Butler had one weak spot that we all know about. Somebody should have been up there. But even Butler, we had our sniper on our side within 4.2 seconds from a distance of about 400 yards, one shot, and he was gone. And if he didn't do it, now, he's David. His name was David. I say, hello, David, every time I see him. David, I like you very much, David. But think of that. Now, if he doesn't hit him, and he hit him right between the eyes from 400 yards without any notice, nobody knew. He heard a sound. He looked over, and there was actually a tree that was somewhat in his way. You know the story very well. And he aimed, he fired, and if he didn't do that, beyond me, you would have had a lot more people killed. We lost one great person and 2 people very badly hurt. They're okay now. But no, that was so. In a sense, that was pretty amazing the job they did. But they did have that one weak spot, as you know. They should have had that covered. Tonight they had everything covered very quickly. And he was fast. He was running full blast, and they got him before they got any further. I was very far away. You know, he hadn't anywhere close to breach the doors of the ballroom. The ballroom was sealed, and everybody in there. That's why once those doors opened, they didn't want to do tonight. If the doors weren't opened, we could have probably done it tonight, but I think we're much better off rescheduling. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, for you and perhaps law enforcement as well, what is the level of confidence that this was a lone actor, and has the suspect made any statements to police while in custody?
Yeah, I think it's just it's not my profession. We have great professionals up here and outside that have been working with us. My impression is he was a lone wolf, whack job. These are crazy people. These are crazy people, and they have to be dealt with. We had that in the second attempt, as you know, and he's spending life in prison. Because if you let him out, they'll probably, you know, if he serves 10 years or 15 years, you let him out, he'll probably try it again with somebody else. They're sick people. We have a lot of sick people. But you're going to know, I think very shortly, you're going to know, Todd, a lot about him. You're going to know a lot about him. Yeah, a couple of more. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Are you concerned about political violence? This could be politically motivated.
All violence. You know, I'm concerned about everything. Look, but I can't be so concerned that you can't function. No, I'm here. It's a dangerous profession. You know, I tell the story, race car drivers, I think it's very dangerous. So if you take 1% and then take about 10% of 1%, just to break it down very easily, they die. So much less than 1%, 10% of 1%. I think bull riding is very dangerous. If you take about the same, 10% of 1%, much less than 1%. But if you take presidents, it's 5.8%. And about 8% are shot at. So nobody told me this was such a dangerous profession. If Marco would have told me, maybe I wouldn't have run. Maybe I would have said, I'll take a pass. No, it's a dangerous profession, but I don't view it that way. Look, I'm here to do a job. It's part of the job. It is a dangerous, I can't imagine that there's any profession that's more dangerous. But I love the country, and I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the job we've done. You see what's happened. We have a great country. We've got, I think, the most successful, the hottest country anywhere in the world. This happened over a period of just a year, and we're going to do great things. But with that come risks. There's no question about it. Yeah.
To that end, I mean, there's been so much political violence, not just aimed at yourself, but at other members of Congress, state house speakers, you name it. Is that just the cost of doing business to do politics in America anymore?
Yeah, well,
what does that say about our country?
Too. You know, we're not the only country. You look at this great violence with all countries. I was talking to somebody from another country today, and they have numerous assassinations of political figures all over the world. You look at South America, it's like some of the numbers are just horrific. It's dangerous. It's dangerous stuff, whether it's here or someplace else. No country is immune. No country. Good question.
Will you turn that temperature down at this point?
Well, probably if I decided to just not do much, you know, if I let everybody rip us off and take advantage of us. Look, we're leading the world in trade now. We're leading the world in the military. We're the greatest military in the world. I rebuilt it in my first term, and now we use it because we have no choice. We can't let, as an example, Iran, we can't let them get a nuclear weapon. Everything will be peanuts compared to that if they ever were given a nuclear weapon, and they'd use it too. Marco and I were talking about it today. They would use it without even hesitation. We can't do that. It was a shame. I said, oh boy, look at the numbers. We just broke 50,000 in the Dow. We just broke 7,000 in the S&P. They said we couldn't do it in 7 years, in 5 years, 4 years. They were saying maybe in 5 or 6 years. And we did it in 1 year. And I called everybody together. I called all of these people and others, and I said, we have to take a little journey. I say to do this. We just had the great number. We just broke 50,000. Wasn't supposed to happen during my term. Wasn't reachable. We did it in 1 year, and I said, we're going to have to make a journey to Iran. They're going to have a nuclear weapon if we don't do it. We had the B-2 bombers take them out. I terminated in the first term the Obama agreement, the Iran nuclear agreement, which was a disaster. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. They would have used it. They would have used it 100%. So, when you do things like that, you become a target. If I wasn't doing that, I guess I'd be a lot less of a target. But I'm honored to be. Okay, one more question. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you, President Trump. Do you know how the gun was brought into the hotel? And also, how does this event impact you as the leader of our country? Do you think it will change your
I
leadership?
like not to think about it. I lead a pretty normal life, considering it's a dangerous life. I think I handle it as well as it can be handled. I think a lot of other people, you read stories where they become basket cases. To be honest with you, I'm not a basket case. I really take it as it is. I do it for the country. I'm not doing it for any other reason. I have a first lady who's doing a terrific job. She loves the country, and she recognizes it better than anybody. She's told me numerous times. She said, "You are in a dangerous job," but that goes along with her too. I mean, it's dangerous for her too. We sat there tonight. We heard that noise, and it was either a tray or a bullet. I was hoping it was a tray, but it wasn't. And again, we had some very brave people doing a great job, so we're very proud of them and happy with them. I just want to thank everybody. They will be able to give you all that information as to the names and everything else. I think we released the names already. Most of you would have it, but his name. We appreciate it. I see so many tuxedos and beautiful dresses. It was a little different evening than we thought, but we're going to do it again, and we have a great chairman who we're so proud of, and we have to make it better. We'll make it safer, I guess, right? But we're going to make it even better. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump, can we hear from the first lady about how impactful this was? Can we hear from her about...
Well, honey, would you want to say something?
Okay.
One in the back, Right.
Millions of people across the globe, in fact, are watching you. You demonstrated courageous leadership, and thank God you're alive, all of us are alive today. What is the message that you want to give to the world that this should change? What corrective measures can we take from here on?
Well, all you can do, look, I don't care how many people you have, how good they are. They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble. I would say, Pete, right? They can make trouble. Some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts, so it can be trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, and he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. It was very impressive the way they got him, because a lot of people would be looking and saying, it's like a weird feeling, and they would let him get through, but they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. What do we do? But it comes with the territory, and if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But we're going to continue to do a great job. That's all I can do. Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
We've just been listening to President Trump give an update on the shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner just outside the ballroom where the event is held. The president says a man charged the security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, that the Secret Service took that man down, that we're hearing the suspect is wounded and is in custody. The president says one officer was shot but saved by his bulletproof vest. The president says he spoke to that officer and that officer is doing great. But again, this happened just outside of that security perimeter that you have to go through, magnetometers and bag searches in order to enter the event. The president talked about other shootings that happened, the Butler, Pennsylvania shooting where he was shot at and hit in the ear, the attempted assassination at Palm Beach at his golf club, and just talked about political violence in general. He asked to commit to hold this event. Again, he wants to see that happen within 30 days and says the purpose of the White House Correspondents' Dinner is to unify the press. And he said, ironically, this event did that, saying the room came together with love. And I want to go to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, who's inside that White House briefing room right there where we just heard from the president. Mary, we're getting a lot more details now from the president about what happened from what was a scene of chaos just earlier this evening that you and I both witnessed.
Yeah, and Diane, of course, you heard from the president there describing what happened. He has released that video there describing the alleged attacker racing past Secret Service, trying to get into the ballroom, which remained secure. The president saying he was taken down by Secret Service. He did say that one Secret Service agent was shot, but he praised his equipment, his vest, for protecting him. The president saying he, of course, has now spoken with him. The president also reflecting on what he was experiencing at that moment, saying, he heard that crash, as we all did there in the room, and he thought it was a tray going down, but he actually said, the First Lady later reflected that she knew immediately what it was. I think what's interesting is to hear the president's tone here, especially as this is something, unfortunately, that he is familiar with. As you've been saying, he has been in similar situations before. He described this as a would-be assassination. And the president, interestingly, though, describing this as essentially being part of doing business when he was pressed here by my White House colleagues about political violence and what can be done to address it. Obviously, he questioned whether this particular event needs to be held in a different venue, but while he praised the Secret Service, he didn't really speak more broadly about the need to dial down the temperature in this country. The president simply saying that these things happen, and he is a target because of the work that he does and the position that he holds.
Yeah, he said it's the cost of doing business, of politics in America, that no country is immune, and also a result of him being so impactful. He also praised the Secret Service, talking about how quickly they took action here. And we also heard from the acting Attorney General, Todd Blanche, saying that we saw the very worst and the very best of this country today. That was also a sentiment echoed by the FBI Director, Kash Patel. And I want to bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Pierre Thomas. Pierre, tell us a little bit more about the investigation. We saw that video released by the president, and you can see this suspect running, and the president was saying he was really moving because it really looks like this man was sprinting, trying to get to that ballroom.
Dramatic and scary situation. What we know is that they have identified the suspect. They have a name. They believe he's from California. The Attorney General said that they are in the process of executing search warrants to get additional details about this man's background and the why. But the scenario that's playing out that you see in that video is stunning. The suspect racing in, trying to get to the event. The Secret Service engaging him. They say he was armed with multiple weapons. Extremely dangerous situation. Secret Service personnel, uniformed officer, we're told, was shot, took a bullet to his vest, which saved his life, obviously. Law enforcement now engaging in a expansive deep dive into the suspect's background. The Attorney General is promising charges in the immediate future. Again, a situation where the top officials in Washington, all in one place, the President of the United States, the Secretary of Defense, the FBI Director, were all in that room with those many journalists. And I can tell you, Diane, when the Secret Service burst into the ballroom where we all were, it was such a scary situation. They told us to get down. People were under the table. Remarkably strange, surreal moment that we all faced tonight, Diane.
It sure was, Pierre. And the FBI director is now asking anyone with information to call 1-800 FBI, 1-800-CALL-FBI for information. And Pierre, as you mentioned, so many of us were in the room. Rachel Scott, not too far from the president. I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, for a little bit more on what happened tonight and what happens next. Rachel?
Yeah, well, we heard from the president tonight. I mean, he was asked directly if whether or not he's going to reconsider doing big events. He made references to that attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania. I was there on the ground covering the rally that day, the attempted assassination in Florida. The security posture after those events did change. The president said this is not going to change how he does events, and he says he is determined to have another White House Correspondents Dinner. Diane.
All right, Rachel, Pierre, Mary, thank you all. And we're hearing now from D.C. police on that event. We're going to carry on that on ABC News Live. And right now here for the network, we'll return you to our regular coverage, the NBA playoff game. Again, our coverage of what happened at the White House Correspondents' Dinner will continue on ABC News Live. I'm Diane Macedo in Washington. Have a good night, America.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Hi, I'm Diane Macedo. Washington, D.C. police are holding a press conference on the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Let's listen.
At about that time, a sole gunman rushed a Secret Service checkpoint in a lobby at the hotel. Secret Service agents stopped the suspect. An agent was injured and transported to a local hospital where the agent is receiving care. The suspect is also transported to a local hospital where he is being evaluated. The president returned safely to the White House, as you know. We are so very thankful to members of law enforcement who did their jobs tonight and made sure that all guests were safe. We have no reason to believe at this time that anyone else was involved. I want to turn to the Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, Chief Carroll, to provide a law enforcement update and specifics.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'm Jeff Carroll, Interim Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department. This afternoon, this evening, members of the United States Secret Service and the Metropolitan Police Department were here at the Washington Hotel for a site detail for the Correspondents' Dinner. As the Mayor mentioned, at approximately 8:36 tonight, an individual charged a U.S. Secret Service checkpoint here in the lobby area of the hotel. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. As he ran through that checkpoint, members of law enforcement from the United States Secret Service intercepted that individual. This is a very preliminary investigation at this point. We do know that law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the individual. We do know that a U.S. Secret Service uniformed division officer was struck in his vest. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. He seems to be in good spirits at this time. The suspect in this case, he was not struck by gunfire. However, he was transported to a local hospital to be evaluated. Again, we're very early in the investigation. We have members of the United States Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the FBI here to continue to investigate this matter. But at this point, it does appear he is a lone actor, a lone gunman. There does not appear to be any sort of danger to the public at this time. However, we are continuing to investigate this matter. At this point, I will turn it over to, I believe, the FBI.
Hi, good evening. I'm Darren Cox. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Washington Field Office. The American public should be proud of the quick response and heroic actions from law enforcement officers tonight to keep the American public safe. Their actions are absolutely heroic. The public should also rest assured that there will be no stone unturned during this investigation. The FBI currently has our Joint Terrorism Task Force here on scene, along with our Criminal Division, our Crisis Response Team, and agents from across the country are working on any leads that may come in this investigation. Anyone with tips in this investigation should call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you.
Director Curran.
Thank you. My name is Sean Curran. I'm the Director of the Secret Service. Tonight, we saw exactly what our brave men and women do each and every day to protect our protectees. It's not easy, and I will tell you that they performed admirably. We got to see what they do, and that individual, when he charged a checkpoint, was apprehended. It shows that our multi-layered protection works, and I'm grateful to our partners that help assist us with building these sites and protecting these sites. Very fortunate that this officer is alive, is being observed, and I'm grateful that the President reached out to this officer and spoke with him earlier. I ask everybody to pray for him and all of our officers and agents that were involved, and I will tell you, we will continue with the mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Pirro.
I'm Janine Pirro. I'm the United States Attorney. Right now, the defendant is being charged with 2 counts, 924C, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and a second crime under 111, which is assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Now, as you all know, there was an individual, a uniformed Secret Service officer, who was shot, and fortunately, he is doing all right and he will be fine. But it is clear, based upon what we know so far, that this individual was intent on doing as much harm and as much damage as he could. And thankfully, because of the checkpoint right outside the ballroom, where thousands of people were situated to hear the President of the United States, because that checkpoint worked, there was no one who was injured when it was clear where this defendant was going. Now, I want to make one comment. As a participant, someone who was in the ballroom, who came this evening to be part of a very lovely event at the White House Correspondents Dinner, I, for the first time, was in a situation where there were shots fired, shots heard, and a whole room went silent. When I lifted my head and when I looked up, every law enforcement officer was out there as we all had our heads down, thousands of them. These are the men and women every day who do what they do silently, and they do it with courage and with dignity. Thank God for our partners, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police. All of them tonight acted so quickly that they prevented what could have been a horrific event where we were all sitting there in one room. The defendant will be arraigned on Monday in federal district court, but make no mistake, there will be many more charges based upon the information that we are learning in this very fluid situation. Thank you.
We'll take a few questions. Right here in the front. Right here in the front.
That this suspect was specifically targeting the president, and is he talking to law enforcement now?
Sure. So at this point, what we know is the individual charged the checkpoint with a firearm in his hand. We know he was running in the direction of the ballroom that the president was in, as well as other cabinet members. So what his specific motivation was, we can't say at this point. However, as we continue to investigate that, we'll continue to work towards that.
Chief, when you say that there seems to have been a lack of authorization to come to this event, was this a failure on the Secret Service?
What we have here is a multi-layered approach. The director spoke about it. We have officers on the outside from the Metropolitan Police Department along with the escort. The inside portion of any presidential site is handled by the Secret Service and law enforcement partners. This is a multi-layered approach. The point of this checkpoint is to intercept individuals that were there, and what we see in this case is when he reached that checkpoint, Secret Service agents and law enforcement engaged him immediately. They were able to bring him into custody and prevent anyone from being harmed.
Chief Carroll, right here.
Chief Carroll, can you tell us if you found a vehicle associated with the suspect, and are you or the FBI conducting any search warrants either on a vehicle or locations here or elsewhere around the country?
Sure, Mark. So as you can imagine, this is very early in the investigation. So, things we're looking into is his background, vehicles. Those are all things that the FBI, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the Secret Service are working together jointly to determine, is there anything else that's available? So I would imagine as we continue to go through this investigation, there will be additional search warrants and things of that nature as the investigation progresses.
Is the suspect known to law enforcement?
At this point, he was not known to the Metropolitan Police Department, I can say that.
Right here. Chief, there are multiple other parties and events happening associated with this weekend tonight. Is there any reason to believe that there will be security concerns at those events? Are there preparations being made locally to protect those attendees?
Yeah, absolutely not. So we have no indication. This is an isolated incident. with one individual is the information that we do have. However, we do have additional officers across the city that are giving special attention. We do know there were some after parties and events that are planned that we will be providing coverage for those events.
The president said that this is not a particularly secure building. Do you agree with that assessment?
I'm not exactly 100% familiar with this building. I do know in this incident tonight, I know there was a security plan that was developed by the Secret Service that the Metropolitan Police Department assisted with, and I know that security plan did work this evening.
Right here.
Thank you so much. Do you know specifically if President Trump was a target of this attack? And can you speak to their reporting about the suspect assembling a long weapon to get into the ballroom? Can you speak to that at all?
Yes, as we said before, we do know the president was inside the ballroom. We know there was cabinet members and many guests in there. Who specifically he was targeting at this point, that's part of the investigation. We do know that he was armed with a shotgun when he ran through that checkpoint, so that would look like a long weapon in video.
All right, right here.
Earlier you said there was an exchange. Did the suspect fire any shots? And was it the uniformed officer? Do you know that which weapon he was shot?
Yeah, obviously, we're only a couple hours into this instance, so we don't have that level of information. The FBI's evidence response team is here. They're processing the scene. So as the investigation develops, all that information, we figure out what the ballistics. The ATF is also on scene here with us.
So the suspect did or did not fire a shot?
Sure. So again, very preliminary information. We do believe he did. However, as the investigation determines, we'll pull the shell casings. We'll be able to get more information as we review more evidence. We're very early in the investigation.
All right, we can take a couple more right here, and one more over here.
Thank you so much. So the president said that he wants there to be another event within 30 days. Given what happened tonight, do you have any sense of what additional security measures might be put in place to ensure that something similar does not happen again?
Sure. I'll talk to the Secret Service.
Yep, this is what we plan for every day. So we take each and every case and we evaluate it, and we do site assessments. And that's why we go out and build these sites per what the event is, and that's how we go about our business.
So will there be any changes or added measures given that this did happen?
We're going to have to evaluate this evening.
Thank you.
Chief, I understand.
I understand how the suspect got into the hotel. Was it a guest here? Are you searching rooms here?
So preliminary information, we do believe he was a guest here at the hotel. We have secured a room here in the hotel. And again, we'll go through the appropriate procedures to determine what was inside there. But that is secure. At this point, like I said, we believe he is the only suspect in this case.
Okay. To jump on that question, I understand the multi-approach to security, but to walk in with a weapon of that caliber and get all the way to the ballroom, which is on the lower level, seems to be quite an extraordinary feat. How does that happen?
Sure. So again, I mean, we're very early in the investigation, so we'll have to determine, we'll go through video across the hotel to figure out how the gun got in, how it got down here. Those things will come through the investigation. At this point, we don't have that level of detail.
Okay, last one.
Yes, there appears to show, video appears to show the president falling down. He was being escorted out. Is he injured at all during his evacuation?
No, we don't have any information that he was injured.
Could you clarify how he was detained? Could you clarify how he was detained? If he was not shot, could you clarify how he was detained?
Sure. So law enforcement in right here in this very area, they actually tackled him to the ground and handcuffed him.
And how many people are in the hospital?
Can you give us his name?
Not at this time.
Do we know?
We will release his name, Mark, once we have all the information. Again, we're still running a lot of things down.
How many people in the hospital?
In the hospital, so we have the Uniform Division Secret Service officer who's being evaluated at the hospital who took a round to the vest, and the suspect is being evaluated, but he was not struck by gunfire.
U.S. Attorney Muir, are you looking at any terrorism charges?
Well, as the chief just indicated, we're very early in this investigation, but make no mistake, if there is anything like that, we will find it and we will file it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
We've just been listening to D.C. Police, the FBI, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, and other law enforcement giving an update on the shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner just outside the ballroom where the dinner is held. The president, the first lady, lots of cabinet members and lawmakers were all there, including myself and many of my colleagues. And now we're hearing from D.C. Police that this was a sole gunman armed with a shotgun, a handgun, multiple knives. They say the suspect charged the security area, was tackled by law enforcement, was not shot, but is being evaluated now at the hospital. That's a photo that the president put out on social media just a little while ago, a photo of that suspect. Right now, they say they believe this was a sole gunman and that there is no danger to the public. I want to bring in our congressional correspondent, Jay O'Brien, who was at that press conference. And, Jay, now we're learning more about the charges this suspect is facing.
Yeah, and additionally, Diane, exactly how the order of events occurred here. And so they characterized a little bit of what you saw in that video. Police officials, the Secret Service director, et cetera, said that that suspect tried to, as you're seeing there, rush a barricade, essentially the edge of what would be the Secret Service perimeter, where the magnetometers are, where you're checked for weapons, because the edge of the perimeter is not the edge of this hotel. The perimeter is actually inside the hotel, which we'll get into in a second. They said that he had multiple weapons on him, including a shotgun and a knife. They say that there was gunfire. They don't know how many shots. One uniformed Secret Service officer was struck in the vest. He's now being evaluated, but he's expected to be okay. Officials say here the suspect, they say, was not struck with gunfire. And so all the attendees in that hall tonight, yourself, me, et cetera, when we heard those pops, these officials confirming it was gunfire. It's just unclear how many shots were fired and who was firing which. They say that this investigation is still preliminary at this hour. We're trying to figure out how many shots the suspect fired, if officials and officers returned fire. The suspect was not hit with gunfire. He was instead apprehended, officials here say, by being brought down onto the ground. And one more detail here, Diane, they say this suspect, they believe, again, they're in the preliminary stages, but they say this suspect, they believe, was a guest here at the Washington Hilton Hotel. That's how he was able to get inside. And that's notable here, Diane, because as I was saying earlier, the security perimeter is inside the hotel. You don't have to go through a magnetometer when you come through the front door. You have to go through a metal detector when you're about to go toward the ballroom. That's where this suspect encountered law enforcement. So he was able to get into the hotel, law enforcement here say, because they believe he was a guest here.
And Jay, the hotel had notified guests that in order to enter the hotel at all, even those not attending the event, just to enter the hotel, they would need their ID on them. They would need their hotel card to show that they were guests at the hotel. So I think many of us were wondering how this person even got into the hotel. And now, of course, as you say, we're hearing from law enforcement that he was a guest there. They say they've secured a room. And I want to bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Pierre Thomas, for a little bit more on the investigation. Pierre, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro now says he's facing 9 counts.
Yes, the 2 counts that she named specifically was using a firearm during a crime and assault on a federal officer. Those are the charges right now. She expects more charges once they get additional information about the suspect. Again, they have a name. As the president and others said, the suspect is from California. You can see a clear photograph of him. We have a name that we're working on. We're not ready to give the information on that name just yet until we get additional confirmation. The other thing that was striking about this is the weaponry, a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives, as was described. And again, if you're a resident in the hotel, that would give a sense of why he was able to move around and probably get to the point that he was. We think that that checkpoint is like one level above where the ball actually and the Correspondents' Dinner was taking place. It's stunning that more people weren't injured. And again, this all taking place in a matter of seconds. As the president said, he was a blur coming through there. Law enforcement quickly surrounding him. Again, a uniformed police officer took a bullet to his vest. Is said to be doing okay, but the suspect not injured. And again, no one else injured in this incident.
Yeah, he was clearly moving quickly, and now the president's touting law enforcement for also moving quickly here. And I want to bring in our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, who was inside that White House briefing room when we heard from the president just a few minutes ago, also was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner along with so many of us. And Mary, it's interesting to hear the president talking about what he thought in that moment. Wee Zhejiang asked him if he was scared, and he said, you know, at first I thought it was a tray.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is a scenario that the president now has several incidents of experience with. He did say that he heard that loud bang, as we all did, in the room. He thought it was a tray dropping. He said, later when speaking with the First Lady, she said, no, she knew right away what that sound was. As, we all saw the Secret Service agents rushing into the room, rushing up to the dais to protect the president and the other members of the cabinet and to try and clear the room. I think it's also interesting, the president was asked here if this makes him sort of reconsider doing these kinds of events. And the president said, not really, because he said that would mean that he basically can't do anything. He said, then you just don't do events. And he said he certainly can't have that. He did say that the room was very, very secure, as we have been discussing, and you and I both experienced firsthand tonight. You do have to go through security. You have to go through those magnetometers in order to get into the actual ballroom. There's certainly, I think, are going to be a lot of questions about the security of the broader perimeter and who is able to get access to the hotel writ large. This is a massive event, and it has been held for many, many, many years in this ballroom, because I can tell you as a Washingtonian, it is the largest ballroom in Washington, and it has, always, it's a space that the Secret Service has a familiarity with. There are plenty of events there, but the president, while he, described sort of the way that this played out, did not seem to question his overall protection. He praised the Secret Service, didn't seem to suggest that his own protection needed to change going forward. Of course, we have seen it changed after the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. So the president overall very happy with the Secret Service and not planning to change anything, but certainly there are going to be a lot of questions about what changes need to be made going forward. As you heard the president saying, though, he plans to hold this event again sometime in the next 30 days.
Yeah, and I want to bring in ABC News Live Prime anchor Linsey Davis, who was also in the room with us and actually left at the same time that FBI Director Kash Patel did. Linsey, talk to me a little bit about what you saw in the room, what you saw as you were leaving, and I understand you also saw Erica Kirk getting emotional.
Sure, we'll start there, Diane. Erica Kirk had exited in the same way that I had from the ballroom, and then she was standing on the street as people were being actually told to vacate that side of the sidewalk, and she stood crying. We can't say what those tears were, but we can say that just 7 months ago, she lost her husband, Charlie Kirk, in an assassination. And so for her to be then in that room as shots are fired, we can only imagine what she was thinking. Kash Patel was seemingly trying to make a number of phone calls and trying to get answers. I was asking his security if they had any sense of what had happened, because, I think that, as you know, Diane, being in the ballroom as well, there was just a sense of bewilderment. And I think it makes more sense now to know that those shots were along the exterior of the ballroom, because it never was clear to me that it was actual gunshots. It just seemed like it was more clatter and commotion than anything else. I guess in retrospect, I think that there was a sense that it could have been. There was more a question of was that what we just heard? Were those shots fired? And so I was just trying to seek clarity from the FBI director, from his security detail, in which they did not give me answers. Of course, not that they would at that time so early on in the game. But Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania was also there. Again, just a lot of confusion and bewilderment in the moments right after. But I did exit along with a number of dignitaries just to see if we could try and ascertain some kind of information. And as you know, the service was so bad actually in the ballroom. So to try to send messages and get back to my own family just to ensure that I was safe, I was trying to get up to higher ground so that I could actually get service. But good to know that everyone was safe and that there are plans to proceed with this dinner again in short order.
Yeah, Linsey, you talked about it not being clear what was happening. It's hard to overstate the size of the room. You have roughly 2,600 people. These tables are packed really close together. And so depending on where you're sitting in the room, it's a pretty loud environment. And so, as you said, to many of us, it wasn't clear what was happening other than someone shouting, "Get down," and seeing everybody duck for cover. But I did talk to two congressmen earlier who said they were seated by the door, and they said for them it was clear as day. They knew right away that these were gunshots. And we heard, as I mentioned, the president saying that he originally thought it was a tray, but he said that the First Lady said she knew right away that something was wrong. And you talked about some of the emotions in the room. He said this was a traumatic event for First Lady Melania Trump, and I'm sure for many others in the room, particularly others who have already been victims of political violence, Steve Scalise among others, and the president himself. And we did hear from the president earlier also that the suspect is from California. He said law enforcement is heading to or already searching his apartment. I want to bring in our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky, for a little bit more on that part of the story. Aaron, what do we know about this suspect so far?
The authorities do have a name, Diane, that they're working with. We've heard it ourselves, and they already have certain addresses that may be associated with that suspect in California, and law enforcement officials are expected to search those addresses pursuant to a warrant signed by a judge. They're also undoubtedly already looking at social media and maybe friends and family to ascertain exactly what he was after. Was he aiming at the president? Was he after one of the politicians, the many politicians in that room tonight? Or was he after somebody in the media, or to make some kind of additional statement? A motive is not yet been clear, although the immediate suspicion was his aim was the president. We just don't know. The authorities are preparing to search these locations in California, but the question, in addition to the motive, Diane, tonight is was there a lapse here? Because to get into that hotel, you do need to have a ticket or a room key. He had a room key as a guest of the Washington Hilton, Diane.
And what's the scene at the hotel, that part of this investigation?
Yeah, that hotel is now a crime scene, in effect. And you heard the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., Jeanine Pirro, say the suspect is going to be charged federally with at least 2 counts, maybe more. I think Pierre outlined them a moment ago. So that all now needs to be sealed off, including the suspect's room, which the Secret Service and other authorities have searched, the immediate area outside the ballroom near the magnetometers where he charged at a high rate of speed, the weaponry that's still there after he was tackled by the Secret Service. All of that is now part of the investigation, a very large crime scene that is now going to span 2 coasts.
And congressional correspondent Jay O'Brien still at that crime scene at the Washington Hilton. Jay, when I left you at the Hilton, we still weren't entirely clear on what happened, other than there were shots fired outside the room. Now we're hearing this suspect was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, multiple knives, charging through the security checkpoint. And law enforcement says not clear what the motive is, but that he appeared to be charging toward that ballroom where, of course, the president, along with the rest of us, was. Jay, talk about what you're seeing at the Washington Hilton now.
Yeah, and Diane, we're actually getting a sense now of exactly where in the hotel this occurred. So the Washington Hilton has multiple layers to it. And in fact, there's actually even 2 ways to get into the ballroom. There's one level and another level. Where we are here on the ground floor, this is where the red carpet is. People take their photographs. The press sets up here to film people coming in. And we've now started to understand, just given what we've seen around us, that it was on this floor, the first floor, where the suspect ran up to that security perimeter and encountered law enforcement. And in fact, it's hard to see, but beyond this police tape here, down this hallway, and it's going to be hard to see because there are curtains here, but down this hallway through these curtains, and you can kind of see it a little bit through those curtains there, although it's very challenging. That is the crime scene. We've been seeing federal officials going in and out, processing that crime scene now. Multiple FBI agents have gone in. We saw crime scene techs with the FBI, photographers photographing the scene for the Secret Service. That is the first level of entrances to the ballroom. And again, for those of us and our colleagues who came to the dinner, they would be familiar with the fact that upstairs is what is essentially the main entrance of the hotel. Then you take escalators or stairs down to this secondary entrance, and you can enter the ballroom through either way. So this suspect appears to have, from what we've heard from law enforcement is accurate, tried to get into one of those doors that was essentially adjacent from one of the most popular spots here, which is the red carpet. He would have only been steps away from the red carpet when he had that encounter with law enforcement that you're seeing there on your screen.
Yeah, and the president said that he did, and law enforcement, for that matter, also confirmed that they're saying this suspect did shoot a Secret Service officer, but hit him in the bulletproof vest. And so that officer is in the hospital. But the president says he already spoke to the officer, that the officer is doing great. The suspect, they say, is also in the hospital, but just being evaluated. They say the suspect was not shot here, so they wouldn't clarify what exactly he's being evaluated for, but that is the photo of the suspect that the president sent out. Now, of course, we are looking into more in terms of confirming his identity and seeing when it's appropriate to release that as well, and of course, more on the investigation. The president says the suspect is from California, that law enforcement is searching his apartment there. There's also a search underway at the Washington Hilton where this happened. They say he was a guest at the hotel, and so they are also searching his room. And I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, who was also there at the White House Correspondents Dinner. Rachel, I know you were seated not too far from where the president was. He says when he heard this sound, he thought maybe it was a tray dropping. What did you hear and what did you see?
Yeah, Diana, I was seated at the table that was closest to where the president was, that first row of tables there. You know, the president said he initially did think it was, in fact, a tray that perhaps fell. And there was a sudden sort of quiet that went over the room and sort of a shh as everyone was trying to figure out what exactly was happening. In fact, I think in some of these videos, you can actually see the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, who is seated right next to the First Lady, even mouth what is happening as we started to see what you're seeing right now. Secret Service agents swarm into the room. They rush the president off of the stage. They rush the vice president off the stage as well as the First Lady. And then what happened next was we saw Secret Service agents climbing over chairs at some points, rushing through attendees. They started to find every single cabinet member that was in the room, as well as important Republican members of Congress, including maybe even the Speaker of the House, and started rushing them out of the room as well. As seated where I was, I could see the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, as he was rushed out of the room as well. I also saw Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being rushed out of the room too. And then, Diane, I mean, we were all in there together. It took, some moments for us to really understand what exactly had just unfolded. We clearly knew that there was a threat to the president and as well to the vice president and to members of the cabinet, which is why we saw Secret Service members jump in, but we had no idea what exactly was unfolding. We had heard of those reported gunshots that were outside that the president was talking about, but we were waiting for details, and we were waiting to see whether or not the president was going to come back in. Initially, that was the plan. The president said he wanted this event to go on. He wanted to continue it. The president was making it very clear that his mindset was he didn't want this to be a drag. He didn't want anyone who was attempting to disrupt this event to win. And so we were actually instructed to take our seats for the program to resume. But not too long after that, we saw someone come out and they removed the presidential seal from the podium, which is a sign that the president of the United States is not going to be speaking at that podium. And then the announcement did come that the president was not going to be taking the stage. This event was going to be canceled. The president would be having this press conference. And so this was just a remarkable set of a couple of hours here that we saw unfold at the White House Correspondents Dinner. And again, the major questions, I mean, images like these. Take a look at this. You have the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, being rushed out of the room. This is an extraordinary image that we are seeing, and we're only starting to see more and more of these as you have journalists who are documenting this. They're to celebrate the First Amendment. They're to celebrate the freedom of the press, and then initially jumping into action as well, doing our jobs to report on what exactly was happening. Thankfully, everyone was okay who was inside of that room, but certainly terrifying moments for everyone involved, including the president, the First Lady, as well as the president's cabinet too, Diane.
They sure were. Rachel Scott at the White House. And now we can confirm the identity of the suspect. I want to bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, for a little bit more about what we're learning. Pierre?
We're learning that the suspect is from Torrance, California, according to our sources. The sources, I'm going to try to be very specific here, is identified as Cole Allen, again, from Torrance, California. As we have been told by various sources and by the Attorney General of the United States, search warrants are being executed at residents associated with this man. They're also at his hotel room, obviously, checking and going through any items they can find there. Again, he's been charged with multiple multiple counts, including assaulting a federal officer and using a weapon in the commission of a crime. Law enforcement officials are expected to do a deep dive. Right now, the D.C. police are saying he acted alone, but again, this is early in the investigation. They are going to look at every bit of social media activity, if he had any. They're going to exploit any devices, mobile phones, computers that he has. This investigation is now full tilt, the highest priority in the federal government in terms of law enforcement right at this moment.
Yeah, a lot to comb through, including the hotel room where he was staying. Pierre, thank you. He's expected to be arraigned on Monday now. I want to bring in FBI agent and ABC contributor Brad Garrett for a little bit more on what's happening in that investigation now and where it goes from here. Brad, one of the questions we keep hearing coming up is just how this happened, right? On the one hand, you have the president and law enforcement touting the quick response here, which I don't think anyone's refuting, that this guy ran through the checkpoint and was taken down within seconds, maybe even less than that. But there's the other question of how someone carrying a shotgun, a handgun, multiple knives makes it that close. Should there have been more security?
Well, I guess you'd have to look, Diane, at the configuration of where that magnetometer was. What is the level of security, if any, as far as checking people prior to getting to that magnetometer? Now, obviously, somebody charging through a crowd and running towards the magnetometer is one thing. But the question you're asking me, obviously, is should he have been stopped prior? Because clearly he's not very far from everyone based on just the audible sounds from the president and obviously everyone that's in the room. So, yes, it's going to be a question of how was he even able to get that far. But, you know, you're also limited sometimes as to the configuration of a room and where security has to be to clear people before they ultimately go into a room where the president and other dignitaries are there. So, yeah, this is going to be another huge, huge call for the Secret Service of how did he get that far and what should we have done potentially to, if it's conceivable, to have stopped him before he even got to where he was ultimately stopped.
And the president, however, today is just thanking the Secret Service, thanking law enforcement in general for how quickly they acted. He said he's very grateful for how he and the First Lady, his cabinet, and everyone else involved was treated. Of course, we know that Secret Service officer who was shot was saved by his bulletproof vest. He's in the hospital now, but the president says he's doing okay. And the suspect is in the hospital being evaluated. They haven't said exactly why he's in the hospital, Brad. They say he wasn't shot in this incident. They didn't elaborate on any injuries, but they just said he's in the hospital being evaluated. But now you have this investigation on multiple fronts, right? One at the hotel, obviously, another at his apartment in California. Where else do you see this investigation going?
So first of all, these type of attacks tend to be lone actors, as you and I have talked about in previous cases. But we don't know that for sure. Is there any sort of connection between him, a group, other individuals, etc.? How did he get the weapons from Torrance, California, which apparently is where he lived, to D.C.? Probably drove, I would guess, but they'll be able to figure that out. But is he somebody also, was he on the radar screen of the Secret Service or law enforcement in some form or fashion? Now, maybe yes, maybe no. Even if he was there any indicator, obviously, that he was going to come and attempt to do what he ultimately did tonight? My guess is obviously people didn't know that or they would have been watching him. But all of those questions are going to have to be answered. And typically people who commit these type of acts will have sort of laid out a trail for law enforcement. Social media, writing things, preparation to come and do this, whatever it might be, to further build the case against him. And to your earlier comment about why he's in the hospital, I mean, they probably tackled him and threw him to the ground. That's what we would do typically. So, he may have gotten hurt in that regard.
And they did say that law enforcement did tackle him. I want to head over to ABC's Steve Portnoy for a little bit more on that security question, because, Steve, we heard on the one hand from the president saying that he felt the room was very secure, and obviously he's praising law enforcement for the quick response here. But he said, and I'm quoting here, I believe, he said it's not a particularly secure building. What are you hearing about the security vulnerabilities?
Well, look, you should say right off the bat, you're speaking to a former president of the White House Correspondents Association. I hosted and organized the event 4 years ago this weekend. It is Washington's highest profile event, but most every year since 1968, it's been held in the same place, at the Washington Hilton, about 1.5 miles north of the White House, up Connecticut Avenue. And that ballroom has played host to this high-profile event, Washington's highest profile event outside of an inauguration every 4 years, pretty much every year since 1968. And what we learned tonight is just what a security vulnerability it is to have this event at a hotel. Because the man who is charged now with using a firearm in a crime of violence and assaulting a federal officer with a dangerous weapon was apparently, according to D.C. police, a guest at this hotel, which means he had a legitimate reason for being there. Secret Service knows this property extremely well. You know, the long history of the Washington Hilton includes the 1981 attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan at that same location, just outside the building, on the T Street entrance, on the other side of, where the ballroom exits. And that's where Ronald Reagan was shot by John Hinckley Jr. 45 years ago in March of 1981. The Secret Service is there multiple times a year because the president, the first lady, the vice president, and other senior officials give speeches in that same ballroom multiple times through the year. But now we have a case where a man was a legitimate guest at the hotel, according to D.C. police, armed with, according to police, a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. And this will raise questions about the security protocols at this event or any other event held at this or any other hotel. Because ultimately, there's only so much that the Secret Service can do. Clearly, I should also point out, Diane, that this ballroom is arguably the hardest of hard targets when it comes to the event itself, because you have an enormous amount of law enforcement personnel and other assets that are brought to bear. You have the senior-most officials in our government in the same room, and you have countless numbers of law enforcement personnel who are armed. And clearly, they engaged fast and had tactical gear and were able to take down this suspect. Even though he wasn't shot, they were able to prevent him from accessing the ballroom. But nevertheless, there are going to be questions about, just how unsafe it is. I mean, it's thank God he wasn't, armed with anything worse. Perhaps, these are things that Secret Service and certainly Brad Garrett could talk about. They think about, they warn about. But if he had been wearing, let's just say, a suicide vest or something, it would have been a far worse situation.
And Brad, I do want to ask you for your take on that. Does this sound to you like more needs to be done here, or does this sound like the security worked the way it was intended to in how quickly they stopped this guy once he did get to that point, Brad?
Well, the problem, Diane, I think I mentioned it earlier, is that you are sort of dealt a set of cards as to configurations of rooms and proximities to, in this case, you're in a hotel, so you're in proximity to X number of rooms. If he was, according to D.C. police, if he was staying in that hotel, there were probably a number of people staying in that hotel. Now, obviously, and I'm making this up, if he checked into that hotel 2 days ago, he's not going to go through any magnetometers to go through the lobby of the hotel up to his room, and there he is. And so he could have brought weapons in with him, just like anybody else could bring weapons into their hotel room. But I guess the question, and Stephen touched on this some, is that maybe they won't have it at this event anymore based on the vulnerabilities of a hotel, other people staying there, and how realistically can you block off an area like the ballroom. I mean, obviously they had it blocked off and they had a plan if something went awry, and they they executed their plan. It sounds like quite well. But the point being is that the configuration apparently was so close to the ability to stop him, in other words, before he got to almost in the ballroom, it might not have been practical that you can do that. So all I'm suggesting is you may not see this event at that location next year.
And I want to bring in Congressman Suhas Subramaniam, who was also there at the White House Correspondents Dinner where this all happened. Congressman, thank you for coming on. Can you tell me what you saw and what you heard tonight?
Yeah, I was actually late to the event, and I was basically coming in through the lobby, and I was going down the escalators. I was asked to show my ticket, and so I did. And I was casually going down the escalator. When I got to the bottom, I saw two guards with machine guns running through and essentially saying, watch out for crossfire, watch out for crossfire. And so we were all, told to take cover, essentially. And so I hid behind a pillar and then found a ballroom that was adjacent to where that area was, and slowly snuck our way out to the exit. And then we saw more guards come in and more people come out, and it was a lot of chaos. And when I saw it, you don't expect something like that to happen to you or at an event like this with so much security. And so it was surreal, but I'm glad everyone's okay.
Inside the room, it was really hard to tell what was happening. We just knew that we were being told, get down, get down. Everyone was getting under the tables. And so, of course, you just follow orders and you see the security officials running in. But you walked in to the scene where this was actually happening. What went through your mind? Did you immediately understand what they were saying to you, or did it take a second?
Honestly, it took a couple seconds because I thought this was part of a play or that this was fake. You don't expect that to ever happen to you, right? And so I was literally right when I got down to the bottom of the escalators. And so I'd never seen anything like that up close and personal. But obviously, I heeded the warnings to watch out for crossfire and to take cover. And that's what I did and others around me did too. And then, we got to an adjacent room and found an exit to get out of the area. But I must have missed them by, maybe a minute or so because there was still a lot of activity, a lot of running around when we got to the bottom.
How do you feel now thinking about that timing, that you were so close to literally walking into the middle of this?
It's a good question. I'm just glad everyone's okay. My wife was not too far away, so I met up with her. And, we just are glad that everyone's okay. And our heart goes out to the person who was shot. I'm glad he's okay, too, the security guard. But, certainly we should figure out what went wrong because everyone should feel safe in an event like this. And with so many VIPs, you're talking about the Speaker of the House, so many members of Congress, so many members of the press, and of course the President. You want those kinds of events to feel safe. The American public wants those kinds of events to feel safe.
Yeah, you sure do. Congressman Suhas Subramaniam, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. Glad you are safe. Glad everyone else who was there is safe. And thank you again.
Thank you.
And I want to go back to Rachel Scott, who, again, was seated not far from the president when this all happened. Rachel, walk me through the next steps for the president now. He's back at the White House where you are. We heard from him a little while ago. What are you watching for next?
I think the big question is whether or not the security posture for President Trump changes. After the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania, at a campaign rally, we saw the president move his rallies for campaigns indoors for quite some time. And then when he did do outdoor rallies, we did see some bulletproof glass that was around the podium as he was addressing attendees. So is there going to be any additional precautionary measures that Secret Service is now going to take when it comes to the President of the United States leaving the White House to be in any sort of ballroom? Will the President of the United States ever be in a sort of hotel, in a hotel ballroom like we just saw? Of course, there's big questions on how the suspected gunman was able to even get this close to not only the President of the United States, but also the First Lady, the Vice President, and other several, dozens of high-level VIPs employees that were in the room, including members of the president's cabinet. Now, the president was asked directly, is he going to do anything differently? And he said he would simply just not have to do anything at all. And so for him, his commitment is that he wants to have this event again in about 30 days or so. There are also questions about whether or not that will happen, where that will take place, and if it will move forward as scheduled. The president is keenly listening to his Secret Service members as well as law enforcement officials on when it comes to security precautionary measures. But of course, everyone here at the White House breathing a sigh of relief that no one inside that ballroom, including the president, the first lady, the vice president, was injured tonight. Diane.
Yeah, the president said that he fought like hell to actually continue on with the night, but that it was security officials who said that that wasn't a good idea. So he said that he heeded those warnings, but that he doesn't want people like this to change the way he or the rest of us acts. And so he does want the event to go on within 30 days. In the meantime, though, there's now a criminal case and an investigation, and I want to bring back our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, for a little bit more on that. Pierre, this suspect's now facing 9 counts. The U.S. attorney says he'll be arraigned on Monday. What are you watching for in the interim?
Well, we'll get additional details. They will officially name the suspect, we think, as early as tonight or in the morning. We will also get more information on what they found during the searches. Again, at this moment, they think that he acted alone. But this is a moment of reckoning yet again, because we don't yet know the motive, but we know this person was trying to get to or get access to an event that involved the media, but also a lot of politicians and also the President of the United States. And it comes against a backdrop of an extremely heightened threat environment in this country, which started pretty much in earnest with the attempt against then candidate President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. Then another attempt just less than a few weeks later while he was at a his golfing resort area in Florida. But then we've also seen those vicious attacks that killed a lawmaker in Minnesota. We've seen the attacks here in Washington, D.C., in which the staff of the Israeli embassy gunned down in cold blood in Washington, D.C. So right now, this country will have to deal with that. But the key right now is to find out as much as possible about the suspect and a possible motive.
It sure is, and investigators are working round the clock, no doubt, to do that. Pierre Thomas, thank you. And again, just to recap for you, we are talking about shots fired outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner tonight, where the president was in attendance. The president, the first lady, cabinet members, other senior leadership in the government were evacuated out of the room after, they say, a suspect charged the magnetometer area, the security perimeter outside of that event, ran through that section and was taken down by law enforcement, tackled. They say he did manage to shoot a Secret Service officer, but that officer was saved by his bulletproof vest. Now, the officer is in the hospital. The president says they have spoken, that the officer is doing well. The suspect is also in the hospital being evaluated, though law enforcement says he was not shot in this incident. He is now facing 9 counts, due to be arraigned on Monday. And now we have this investigation, part of it at his apartment in California, part of it at the Washington Hilton where this happened, and where law enforcement says he was also a guest at the hotel. And we will, of course, continue to bring you updates as we get them. Right now, we're going to return to your regular programming, and we will have the latest tomorrow on Good Morning America and on ABC News Live. I'm Diane Macedo for you in Washington. Good night and stay safe, America.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Whenever, wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed.
Here in London, in Buffalo, Uvalde, Texas,
Edinburgh, Scotland.
From Poland once again tonight. Thank you so much for streaming with us. Ukrainian refugees here in Warsaw.
Do you think you'll ever be able to go back home?
We're heading to a small community outside of Mexico City. Splintered houses and splintered lives. The magnitude of the devastation. You're streaming ABC News Live. Reporting from Rolling Fork, Mississippi. Santa Fe, New Mexico. Raleigh, North Carolina. The U.S. Capitol. Mayfield, Kentucky.
Minneapolis.
Mexico.
Tongass National Forest, Alaska. Getting you behind the stories as they happen. Giving you a front row seat to our world as it plays out in real time, live.
ABC News Live Prime. We'll take you there.
Stream ABC News Live weeknights, America's most honored streaming news program, only on ABC News Live. Streaming free right now wherever you stream your news.
All across America.
Good morning.
Hello. Wherever we are.
Welcome home.
It's good to be home.
It feels like home.
When's the last time we dropped our things and went? Woke up somewhere that we both never been. Growing up doesn't mean
Good morning. How are you?
At the start of the day, letting us into your home, putting the good in your morning.
Man, it's good to be home.
GMA. It's an invitation to come together. Brighten your morning.
I'm George. How are you?
And the day ahead.
Coming up, a daring escape from a house of horrors. A sister who saved 13 children.
That was my only chance. At least if something happened to me, at least I died trying.
The story of this family shocked the nation. And now tonight, a brand new story. 3 Turpin siblings you have not seen before. How did the system supposed to protect them send them into fear and anguish a second time? The Turpin.